Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Lifetime Adoptions Q&A webinar for hopeful adoptive parents. I'm Kim King, and Heather Featherston is also here, and we are excited to dive into the questions that are on your minds, and we appreciate you investing in your adoption education by listening to webinars like these. If you are brand new to Lifetime Adoption, be sure to fill out your free application at lifetimeadoption.com. And whether you have applied with us or are just at the beginning stage of maybe wanting to get some questions answered first, you are always welcome to give us a call at 727-493-0933. Call us anytime. Let us know that you are newly inquiring about adoption with Lifetime, and you can speak with an available coordinator who is here to answer the questions and let you know your next steps. The application is a great next step, whether we've spoken or not. You can fill that out within about 15-20 minutes at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Also, be sure to find us on all the social media platforms at Lifetime Adoption. And with that, Heather, thank you so much for being here with me and for getting our webinar ready. I know we have some questions that came in from the registration, so we want to.
We do.
Yeah.
And before we get started, I do also want to say that we love webinars. We love sharing what we know about adoption with others. And for families who are working with Lifetime, if you love this format too, families who are with Lifetime, we do 2 of these a month exclusively for our Lifetime families. Tonight is one of the ones we have open to the general public, really as a way of sharing adoption information, trying to still bust some of those myths about adoption that are out there, and really to kind of do a quick fire Q&A for families who are really just jumping in to explore at the very, very beginning. So let's jump in.
As our listeners will soon find out, we have no shortage of willingness to answer questions and talk about adoption. Heather, I was just thinking that about that as I was preparing my tea to sip on as we have this talk tonight, that it's just so cool that we still, after all these years, just love talking about adoption. And one of our favorites is busting those myths, because it's just so helpful and comforting to adoptive parents to actually have a real person, or maybe 2 real people, answering questions and getting on the phone with us or listening to these webinars. It's very interactive, and we understand where you're coming from, and we want to know more as well. So be sure to engage with us. You can request information about our services at kim@lifetimeadoption.com. You can send me an email, let me know your name and your state. And if you are open to sharing a little bit about your story so far, feel free to put that in the email and I can reply with the info packet for adoptive parents. Heather, let's jump into this very first question, which actually was something another family also asked me recently during a call. I've heard about adoption scams. What are they and how do those happen?
Well, there's 2 different kinds of adoption scams. The first is usually someone wanting money. They will contact a family, often independently, not through an agency or an adoption professional. They will contact a family directly, and they can say things like, I have a baby for adoption. It only costs this much, which definitely sounds a little more like child trafficking, human trafficking. But sometimes they may say, may pose as a birth mom, say, I don't really want to go through an agency. Can't we just do this, separate? And they may ask for pregnancy-related expenses, which are allowed in most states. But there's a lot of red flags with that. There's another kind of adoption scam too, and that is an emotional scam. And that is when someone is posing as a person wanting to place a baby for adoption, and they have no intention of placing. They just are there for the attention that they are getting, the attention that it brings them. Both are difficult for adoptive parents because they get their hopes up. These sound and seem like they might be real possibilities. And sometimes when we're waiting to adopt, um, because we have a vested interest in the outcome, sometimes our judgment is not really, well, I think anytime we have a vested interest in something, our judgment, we might not question things that we need to question. And that's where a qualified and experienced adoption professional can come in. For families who work with Lifetime, we tell them, if you get contacts like that, include us, because we can help spot adoption scams. We also have access to various tools that lay people don't have. We have, it's about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a family who contacted us with one they thought that they were contacted independently on, and we started working with the woman and very quickly determined, no, this is an adoption scam. She isn't legitimate. This isn't going to go through. I think she even had a proof of pregnancy that was doctored. And only about a couple weeks later, we heard from another one of our waiting families who let us know, oh, we're matched. Oh, okay. Well, who are you matched with? Well, we contacted an attorney. We've got this match. Come to find out, it was the same woman. So we let them know, what, she's, we've worked with her. She is a scam, and she in fact was a scam. And these women, they will try to find anyone they can to, they're trying to separate you from your money. So, that's kind of how they happen in a nutshell. How you protect yourself is really ensuring you're working with qualified adoption professionals who can help, or who do help with screening, because this is a very real thing, and it happens more often than you would think.
Mm-hmm. And we have built into our gentle screening and support process for women who contact us to explore adoption and potentially match with one of our waiting adoptive families. There are naturally going to be requirements here at Lifetime and some norms just in the way we operate. The norms as far as our do's and don'ts, what we see as acceptable, other agencies might find, or what we see as not acceptable, other agencies might totally go with, such as maybe assisting with over 20,000 in pregnancy-related expenses, just helping with her bills. Well, naturally, if a woman is looking to take advantage of someone, she's going to probably want to get as much as she can with as little
Right.
effort as possible. So, just here at Lifetime, our families rarely actually see those come to fruition with them
Mhm.
all the way down the line. It doesn't mean they don't get a contact or two, maybe through the social media, but it's very rare that those get too far once we're involved.
Yep, absolutely. So I thought this was a great question, Kim. And this was, do we get a full medical history on the child and his or her parents? And I like this question because it's something that oftentimes adoptive parents don't really think about until a little further down the line. I will say you get as much information as we have when you're with Lifetime. Can't speak about other adoption organizations, but I just want to say, if she has been getting prenatal care, absolutely, we will get what we can on the birth mother. Because this asks about parents, birth fathers, I would say, unless the birth father has some type of condition, we don't usually get medical records on a birth father. And you kind of have to think about it. Most men in their 20s, 30s, at least most men I know, don't really go to the doctor unless they have to when they are those ages. So there isn't usually a lot of medical records to get. We do ask that birth mother fills out a health history form, kind of like you fill out when you go to a new doctor, or maybe every couple years at your doctor. So, we do ask about conditions in her history, and we do try to get that on the birth father too, if he is involved. Now, one thing that can be difficult, not all birth mothers may be receiving prenatal care. Maybe any number of reasons why she's not getting prenatal care, but she may not be doing that, in which case, we don't, there's nothing to get. So, at Lifetime, and probably with most other organizations, you get everything they have. It's just how much is there going to be?
hmm And here at Lifetime, we require a proof of pregnancy in order to, at a minimum, work with us and our families. So every potential birth mom has to be seen at least one time. Heather, when we say proof of pregnancy,
Mhm.
some people might automatically know what that means, but
Right,
for those who don't,
right.
what
We
does that?
Right. It's usually considered a pregnancy verification, and it can be any number of things. I will say one time a woman tried to mail us a positive pregnancy test on a stick, and we told her, no, 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 that's
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 not
not
what we
gonna do
mean.
it. No, it is verification by someone in the medical field. It often is an ultrasound photo that shows her name and the date. It can be a note from a doctor that can be verified. And women get it. They can get it at a prenatal appointment. They can get it at a pregnancy clinic. They can get it in the ER. Wherever they're seen, they usually get pregnancy verification. And it isn't just for adoption. Many times, women who work certain jobs need pregnancy verification um, to get on light duty or modified duty. So, a verification of pregnancy is not uncommon, and it is something that is issued. And Kim, I'll just throw a little tip in here too for families who, we were just talking about scams. If you are ever contacted with a woman who, gosh, it seems legit, she has this verification of pregnancy, for us, for instance, we have a woman we're working with right now. She does. She has a verification of pregnancy. She says she's due, I think, end of December, end of December. But her verification of pregnancy was done in April, and she's had nothing since. And she is seeking help with pregnancy-related expenses. So in this case, we need something a little newer. A lot can happen between April and October.
Mhm.
So, those are kind of the things that just are important to know, and what we try to seek. And yeah, that's what a proof of pregnancy is.
And I think most adoptive parents understand that there could be some natural barriers that prevent
Sure.
women from going to their routine prenatal appointments.
Yep.
Maybe it's all we can really do to get her there for at least that proof of pregnancy, or something more current, like in the case that you described. Parents are usually willing to help with transportation, co-pays, and are willing to do whatever they can to support her. And yet, not every birth mom will have the ability to go to those prenatal appointments. Those barriers that prevent her from doing that can be the same reasons, the very same factors that are leading her to consider adoption and voluntarily relinquishing a child. Heather, just off the top of your head, what are some of those barriers, or if you can, of course, we never tell identifying details about, our clients, but just maybe some vague descriptions of barriers that women have encountered that one brought them to adoption, but also meant that they aren't always able to get to the appointments like you or I would expect, right?
Transportation can be a big one. Um, Not having, I'll say medical insurance. That also means like Medicaid, like state insurance. And that may mean that they just haven't filled out the form to do it. Um, Sometimes they don't have a doctor. Maybe their doctor left the area, or their clinic closed, or they just don't know where, how to get started. Some moms have told us, I've been pregnant before. I know the drill. I don't need to go.
hmm
Um,
Right. And one I've heard of, Heather, is that her doctor's office doesn't allow children to be there for any appointments.
yes,
So,
Yeah,
and
she doesn't have childcare.
she doesn't have childcare, she doesn't have family support. Imagine she's very much on her own in the world, right? So if she's considering adoption, her situation is probably very far from ideal.
Mhm, mhm. I'm going to give you one more, Kim, that most people don't know, and that is she is too late in her pregnancy. And that could mean, maybe 7 months along. Often, doctors may not start prenatal care at 7 months along. And so, if she is going to go anywhere, she may need to be seen in the ER. And you don't get routine medical care at an ER. So, like I say, that's something a little most people don't know that.
Heather, this is something that has to do with the topic of open adoption.
Mhm.
Adoption is its own topic to dive into, but for now, let's just stay on this specific question. Is there anything in an adoption contract that legally requires us to continue communication with a birth mother?
So I'm gonna answer this a little differently. This is referring to an adoption contract. I don't know if the person who asked this is familiar with this, so I'm gonna kind of back up. There's something called a post-adoption contact agreement. Some states that can be filed in court, so it's legally enforceable. Other states it cannot. But it is a document that sets up the expectations on both sides of what contact will be in open adoption. If it is filed with the court in a state that it's legally enforceable, yes, it is legally enforceable. So, but I think it's more important to think of contact in open adoption from a moral perspective. You know, moms usually, I just saw a form come through today where a mom filled out what she wants in post adoption contact. And her exact words were, I want the adoptive parents to decide. I don't want to intrude. And, that's how a lot of women see it. Sometimes they see it a little differently. Sometimes they see it as, you know what, this is hard. This is the contact I want. But it really depends individually on the relationship that you've built if you've had the opportunity before the adoption. And most moms don't want to intrude, but it might be I think it often helps in their healing to see the evidence that this was a wonderful decision for their child. Women aren't forced to choose adoption like they were in the 50s and 60s. They're choosing adoption because they want more for their child than they can provide. That doesn't mean that it hurts any less, but they're doing it so their child has more than they can give them. So I will say no, there is nothing in an adoption contract that requires you to continue if you're in a state that it can't be legally filed. But I will say families should never, ever promise to stay in touch and then cut her off. That open adoption may be the only reason she's choosing adoption. And if you can't it can't be open to that, then don't pursue open adoption. If you're asking this question, I would really spend some time to reflect on if this is the best path for you. Now, I do think it is very important that everyone knows in those agreements there is a clause that discusses the best interest of the adoptee. And while it may mean, say you have a child who is really struggling and they're, 12 years old and they're saying, I don't want to go have the visit. I don't like all this. Okay. Then, there is that clause in there in the best interest of the child, but it doesn't alleviate the responsibility of adoptive parents to keep birth mom updated, provide her with updates and share, even though it's kind of hard, that what your son he's struggling right now with the whole adoption as he's developing his identity, and he's expressed that he wants to skip this year. But here's some pictures. Here's how he's doing. Because most parents learn this after they've matched and they've adopted, that they're often surprised how much they care for their child's birth mother. They didn't go into it expecting that, and they are new parents with their baby at home and find themselves feeling a little bittersweet because they're thrilled to be new parents, but at the same time, they kind of bore witness to birth mom's grief, and they care about her. And in many cases, they've expressed that they love her. And so it's an interesting, like I say, interesting relationship that most adoptive parents find themselves in, that they could not foresee it ahead of time.
Post-adoption contact agreements and being filed with the court. And Heather, we may or may not really be able to give a definitive answer because, first of all, we can't answer legal questions. So
Right.
this is kind of getting into that realm, and we want to be sure people understand we can only share our experience as adoption professionals, but can't give legal answers. And of course, every state has different adoption laws. But I think families wonder, if I miss a visit or she doesn't understand and she thinks I'm withholding something from her about the child, and she's demanding we follow through with the contact we initially agreed to at birth, can this mean that our adoption is revoked? Do we lose our parental rights over this? I think that's what kind of brings these questions about. Families
Well,
want to know worst case
sure,
scenario. Does this undo
sure,
the adoption if we miss an update?
sure. This is what I would say. Find a way to not miss an update, first and foremost. Set calendar reminders if you think that's a problem. But the other thing is if you're having challenges with communication, loop in your adoption professional. Very, very important. And no, it may not undo your adoption, but none of us want to be dragged into court. And again, you really need to think of this from a moral standpoint also. So here at Lifetime, it's very rare, but there are occasions where we have to kind of mediate communication. It usually isn't in a scenario like you're talking about, Kim. It's usually more as the child grows and changes and an adoptee begins to express their own desires. So it really, it's a good question, but it's also a question based in fear. And I think going into open adoption with an understanding and a hope that, the mom that chooses you is choosing you because there's some commonality. And that's why most women choose families, is they have something in common. You have the opportunity to build a relationship. And like I say, I this is not something I would spend time being fearful of.
Right. Yeah, I think, yes, just providing that clarity that open adoption is not shared custody.
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
So, if we help cover a birth mother's medical expenses, could that encourage her to attend more of her prenatal appointments?
That's an interesting question. Maybe, maybe not.
Depends
You
on the
know,
barrier she's dealing with, right?
it really does. Most birth mothers will qualify for Medicaid. So it's not necessarily the funds that are a problem. It can be on occasion, but we don't hear about that too much. But certainly if you have a budget for pregnancy related expenses that can help her overcome the barriers to care she has, yes, that might encourage her to attend more appointments.
Mhm. When it comes to creating your adoption profile or your resume or your profile presentation materials,
Mhm.
how long does that take? Is that something that a family could do in a couple of hours? What should they
That's a
expect?
great question. I can only answer from Lifetime's perspective. not generally speaking. And from Lifetime's perspective, no, you can't do it in a couple hours. And that's because this is something that you really have to be intentional about. You have to be intentional about showing photos of what your life is like. And most of us don't have those photos sitting around. Most of us have vacation photos, maybe photos out to dinner or at an event, photos at Christmas or at a family wedding, something like that. We don't have photos showing what life is like. So you have to be intentional about photos, and at Lifetime we give you tips and guides on how to do that. You do have to write about yourselves, and that sometimes takes a little longer than you think. We encourage families to really write about what makes them different and unique. And here at Lifetime, we also ask families to do a video, which we've heard from birth moms. It's very, very important to them. Many of them will not read the words, they will watch the video. So that's an important aspect too. So, you know, I encourage families to take time to review the information that we provide them at Lifetime and to kind of make a plan and start taking photos, being intentional as you go through your day, because it does take a little bit of time. But it's one of the things that many families look forward to the most, is really the opportunity to connect with a birth mother, show her what makes them different, not what makes them better, because birth mothers aren't looking for Barbie and Ken in a dream home. They are looking for parents for their child, and many times birth moms choose them because there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's something in common, you know. And we've had the story I love to tell is, you know, we ask families to choose some of their favorite things, and we had a birth mom tell us one of the things that caught her eye about a family was that the husband's favorite candy was Swedish fish. They're like gummy fish. I don't know why they call them Swedish fish, but that was her favorite candy, and she'd never had seen anybody that had Swedish fish. Now, that wasn't the only reason she picked them, but it caught her eye as she was reviewing families and made her dig a little deeper. So really, it just gives an opportunity to find common ground and to be noticed and learned about and ultimately chosen by a birth mother.
And at Lifetime, we will guide you through every step
Yes.
of developing your profile. And in the meantime, you can ask your coordinator about how to create a temporary profile, which is a one-page little template you can fill out within a couple of hours to start getting you shown to birth moms that may be popping up for our birth mother coordinators as a possible match for you. You match what that birth mom is looking for in a family. She fits within all of the adoption preferences you have established with Lifetime. You pop up as a possibility for that birth mom. The coordinator is going to check to see if there's a profile to send. And if you have your temporary profile going available, then you do get sent. You never have to miss an opportunity, even while you're new to the program and working on your full length profile, video, and even home study. So ask us more about that if you're curious. And Heather, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this call as always. Um, and we appreciate you joining us and listening to the conversation and keeping the conversation going. And thank you so much for the questions that you had submitted. We really appreciate those and are hopeful that that helped ease some of your concerns and help you understand the reality of adoption and be able to work from a place of empowerment rather than fear. Lifetime has the support that you need to take your next steps, and you are welcome to reach out to us. You can fill out our free application at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And you can also view more webinars if you missed any in the past or just want to keep listening today, they are all on our YouTube playlist for adoptive parents. Just look for Lifetime Adoption and you'll find it there. You can email me, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, with any additional personal questions or to request our info packet. Please be sure to let me know what state you're in, or give us a call Monday through Friday, 727-493-0933, where we are here during those days to answer the questions you have as an inquiring prospective adoptive family. So thanks again, and we will talk to you very soon.